First contact misjudged. The massive Zolaxian command ship, Eternal Dominance, hung in space like a metal mountain, its 60-kilometer length dwarfing everything around it. On the gleaming command deck, High Commander Zrel stood with his 4 arms crossed behind his back, all 3 of his violet eyes fixed on the main view screen. "What are these?" he asked, mandibles clicking with amusement as the screen displayed several small vessels entering the outer boundary of Zolaxian space. Senior Tactical Officer Morax enlarged the image. "Unknown vessels, Commander. They just crossed into our territory near the Epsilon border. Primitive design, minimal shielding, rudimentary propulsion systems. The bridge crew, all tall, carapaced beings with multiple limbs, laughed at the sight of the small ships. "Look at their size," said Navigation Officer Krill. "Each one is barely a tenth the length of our scout vessels." High Commander Zrel's mandibles clicked again. "What species?" "Unknown, Commander," replied Communications Officer Drex. "They're transmitting identification signals, but they're not in our database. They call themselves humans from a planet called Earth." Junior Intelligence Officer Vex, smaller than the others, and with paler blue carapace, studied the readings from his station with intense concentration. Unlike his colleagues, he didn't join in the laughter. "Interesting energy signatures," he murmured, mostly to himself. "Their propulsion systems are small but remarkably efficient. And these readings from their hulls." No one paid attention to Vex. High Commander Zrel was already issuing orders. "Send Patrol Squadron 6 to intercept. Tell them to discourage these primitives from further incursion. No need for diplomacy with such an obviously inferior species." "Commander," Vex said hesitantly, "perhaps we should establish communication before." "Did I ask for your opinion, Junior Officer?" Zrel's center eye swiveled to focus on Vex. "No, Commander." "Then carry out my orders." "Yes, Commander." Meanwhile, aboard the Earth exploration vessel Prometheus, Captain Ilara Chen walked the bridge with measured steps. At 45, she had the calm demeanor of someone who had seen her share of challenges. Her dark hair was streaked with silver, pulled back in a practical knot at the base of her neck. "Status report," she said, stopping behind the navigation console. Lieutenant Commander Aiden Rodriguez looked up from his station. "Captain, we're detecting massive structures at coordinates 227.4 by 118.9. Natural formations." "Negative. They're moving, Captain. I think they're ships." Rodriguez's voice held a mixture of awe and concern. Chen moved to his station and studied the readings. "Size estimate. Largest one is approximately 60 kilometers in length." A hushed silence fell over the bridge. Humanity had been exploring space for nearly a century, but they had never encountered alien life, let alone vessels of such enormous size. "First contact protocols," Chen ordered, her voice steady. "Lieutenant Park, prepare the standard greeting package. All ships maintain position but stand ready for defensive maneuvers if necessary." Lieutenant Min Ji Park's fingers flew across her communications console. "Greeting package ready, Captain. Transmit on all frequencies." The bridge crew watched the main view screen with anticipation. This was the moment humanity had been preparing for since they first reached for the stars. "Captain," Park said suddenly, "we're receiving a response. Translating now." Words appeared on the screen. "LVZOLAXIN to spacey EDMEDA Eloi. Primitive vessels will be destroyed if you do not comply." Rodriguez frowned. Not exactly friendly. "Captain," called out Tactical Officer Commander James Wallace, multiple vessels approaching at high speed from the large structures. "They appear to be warships." Chen studied the tactical display. The incoming alien ships were each at least 5 times the size of the Prometheus. There were 6 of them, bearing down on her small fleet of 5 exploration vessels. "All ships, defensive formation Delta," Chen ordered calmly. "Activate shield harmonics. Do not fire unless fired upon." The Earth ships moved with surprising speed and precision, arranging themselves in a complex defensive pattern. Despite their small size, their movements were perfectly coordinated. On the Zolaxian patrol ship Swift Justice, Squadron Commander Thrix watched the human vessels with disdain. "Look how they scatter," he said to his bridge crew. "They recognize our superiority." His tactical officer frowned. "Commander, they're not scattering. They're forming a defensive pattern. It doesn't matter. Fire warning shots across their formation. Show them our power." Brilliant energy beams lanced out from the Zolaxian vessels, deliberately missing the human ships, but close enough to demonstrate their firepower. To the Zolaxians' surprise, the human ships didn't panic or flee. Instead, they adjusted their formation slightly, maintaining their defensive posture. "They're not running," the tactical officer observed. "Then they're fools," Thrix replied. "Target their engines. Disable them." The Zolaxian ships fired again, this time aiming directly at the human vessels. What happened next astonished the alien crews. The human ships moved with impossible agility, evading the energy beams with precision that should have been beyond their capabilities. Their hulls shimmered briefly as they activated some kind of defensive technology. Aboard the Prometheus, Captain Chen remained outwardly calm despite the attack. "Return fire. Target their weapon systems only. Use the phase shift torpedoes." The human ships fired in perfect unison. Small, silver projectiles shot toward the Zolaxian vessels. The aliens didn't bother to evade. Their shields were more than capable of handling such primitive projectiles. But when the torpedoes reached the Zolaxian shields, they didn't explode. Instead, they seemed to phase right through the energy barriers, as if they weren't there. They impacted precisely on the alien ship's weapon emplacements. Alarms blared through the Zolaxian vessels as their main weapon systems went offline. "Impossible," Thrix shouted. "How did they penetrate our shields?" Back on the Zolaxian command ship, High Commander Zrel watched in disbelief as the small human vessels disabled his patrol squadron's weapons with apparent ease. "What just happened?" he demanded. Junior Officer Vex spoke up, his voice steady despite the tension. "Commander, I believe the humans have developed technology that allows their projectiles to phase through energy shields operating on standard frequencies." "That's impossible," Senior Officer Morax objected. "No species at their technological level could develop such sophisticated weaponry." "Evidently, they have," Vex replied. Zrel's mandibles clicked rapidly. "A sign of agitation. Send reinforcements. I want those human ships captured or destroyed." But before additional orders could be given, the main view screen changed. A human face appeared, Captain Ilara Chen of the Prometheus. "This is Captain Ilara Chen of the United Earth exploration vessel Prometheus," she said, her voice translated into the Zolaxian language. "We came in peace, but we will defend ourselves if necessary. Your vessels have been disabled but not destroyed as a demonstration of our peaceful intentions. We request diplomatic discussions." High Commander Zrel stared at the human face on the screen. How could these tiny ships, these primitive creatures, have defeated Zolaxian warships? "I am High Commander Zrel of the Zolaxian Confederation," he replied after a moment. "You have committed an act of war by entering our territory and attacking our vessels." Chen's expression remained neutral. "We entered unknown space on a mission of peaceful exploration. We responded to your unprovoked attack with minimal force. We could have destroyed your vessels but chose not to. I suggest you consider that before escalating this conflict further." The bridge of the eternal dominance fell silent. The human was right. They had shown restraint. "We will withdraw our vessels," Zrel said finally. "You have 24 hours to leave Zolaxian space." "We would prefer to establish diplomatic relations," Chen responded. 24 hours, Zrel repeated, then cut the transmission. He turned to his officers. "I want a full analysis of their weapons and defense systems. I want to know everything about these humans, and prepare the battle fleet. If they don't leave in 24 hours, we will show them the true might of the Zolaxian Confederation." Junior Officer Vex looked troubled. Commander, perhaps we should consider their offer of diplomacy. Their technology is clearly more advanced than we anticipated. Zrel's center eye fixed on Vex. They got lucky once. It won't happen again. The Zalaxian Confederation has ruled this sector for 2,000 years. We will not be challenged by primitives in toy ships. As the command crew dispersed to carry out their orders, Vex remained at his station, studying the recordings of the brief battle. The humans had displayed not just advanced technology, but remarkable restraint and discipline. They had disabled the Zalaxian ships with surgical precision, avoiding unnecessary damage or casualties. These were not the actions of primitive beings. These were the actions of a sophisticated, disciplined species with a strong moral code. Vex had a sinking feeling that High Commander Zrel was making a terrible mistake. The turning point. 22 hours later, the massive Zalaxian battle fleet assembled at the edge of the disputed sector. 300 warships, ranging from 5-kilometer scout vessels to the enormous 60-kilometer command ships, formed an imposing wall of metal and energy. High Commander Zrel stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominance, surveying the tactical display with satisfaction. "Status report," he demanded. Senior Tactical Officer Morax responded promptly. "All vessels in position, Commander. The humans have not left our territory. Their 5 ships remain in the same location." "They're either brave or stupid," Zrel said. "Probably both." To everyone's surprise, Junior Intelligence Officer Vex had been promoted to Advisory Tactician by the Confederation High Command based on his earlier observations. He now stood near Zrel, his pale blue carapace standing out among the darker-hued senior officers. "Commander," Vex said carefully, "I've completed my analysis of the earlier engagement. The humans displayed technology far beyond what their ship designs suggest. Their phase-shift torpedoes indicate a sophisticated understanding of energy shield frequencies. One lucky technology doesn't make them a threat to our battle fleet," Zrel replied dismissively. "There's more, sir. Their ship's movements during the battle showed acceleration and maneuverability that should have killed their crews from forces alone. I believe they may have some form of inertial control technology we don't understand." Zrel clicked his mandibles impatiently. "It doesn't matter. No 5 ships, no matter how advanced, can stand against 300 of ours. Sir, I recommend caution. We should attempt diplomatic." "Enough." Zrel cut him off. "The decision has been made. The humans have had their chance to leave." Aboard the Prometheus, Captain Chen studied the massive alien fleet with outward calm, though inwardly she felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. The fate of humanity's first contact with an alien civilization, possibly the fate of Earth itself, might depend on her next decisions. "They're not interested in talking," she said to her senior officers gathered in the bridge conference area. Commander Wallace nodded grimly. "No, they're not. And that's a lot of firepower they're bringing to the conversation." "Options?" Chen asked. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez spoke first. "We could withdraw. Live to fight another day." Chen shook her head. "If we run now, they'll see it as weakness. They might follow us back to Earth." "The phase-shift torpedoes worked well," Wallace said, "but we have a limited supply, and they'll adapt quickly." "What about the NAV-SUOM system?" asked Lieutenant Park. "It's never been tested in actual combat." Chen considered this. NAV-SUOM, Neural Augmented Vessel Control and Operations Matrix, was Earth's most closely guarded technological secret. It allowed human pilots to neurally link with their ships, effectively becoming one with the vessel. Reaction times were reduced to milliseconds, and multiple ships could be linked in a neural network, allowing for unprecedented coordination. "Time to see what it can do," Chen decided. "Contact Earth Command. Request immediate deployment of the first response fleet, with full NAV-SUOM integration." 6 hours later, as the Zalaxian fleet prepared to advance, their long-range sensors detected something unexpected. "Commander," called out the sensor officer, multiple new contacts appearing at the edge of the system. Zrel moved to the tactical display. How many? 50 vessels, sir. Similar design to the original human ships, but larger. Vex studied the readings. Sir, they appear to have come from outside the system. They must have some form of faster-than-light travel we don't understand. This was disturbing news. The Zalaxian Confederation had been trying to develop practical FTL travel for centuries without success. It doesn't matter, Zrel insisted. We still outnumber them 6-1. All ships advance at attack speed. The massive Zalaxian fleet moved forward, energy weapons charging, missile bays opening. They expected the humans to adopt a defensive posture, perhaps trying to flee. Instead, the human fleet split into multiple smaller groups and accelerated directly toward the Zalaxian line. They're attacking, Krill said incredulously. They must be insane. The human vessels moved with impossible coordination, weaving complex patterns that made targeting extremely difficult. When the Zalaxians fired, the humans seemed to know where the shots would go before they were fired, effortlessly evading the energy beams. How are they doing that? Zrel demanded. Vex studied his readings intently. Their ships are moving in perfect synchronization. It's as if they're all controlled by a single mind. The human vessels reached the Zalaxian line, and what followed could only be described as a dance of destruction. They slipped between the massive alien ships with precision that seemed impossible, firing their phase-shift torpedoes at critical systems. Aboard the lead Earth vessel, the heavy cruiser Intrepid, Fleet Captain Mira Santos directed the battle through her neural link. Her consciousness was expanded across all 50 human ships, feeling them as extensions of her own body. 5,000 human pilots, all neurally linked to their vessels and to each other, moved as a single entity with thousands of independent points of action. Target their propulsion and weapon systems only, Santos ordered through the neural network. Minimal casualties. The human fleet executed her commands with perfect precision. Zalaxian ships found their engines disabled, their weapons offline. Despite their overwhelming numerical advantage, they couldn't land a solid hit on the agile human vessels. On the Eternal Dominance, chaos reigned. 30 vessels disabled. Called out Morax. They're targeting our engines and weapons specifically. How? Zrel roared. How are they coordinating so perfectly? Vex had been analyzing the battle data. Commander, I believe the humans may have developed some form of neural interface technology. Their reactions are too fast, too coordinated for conventional control systems. A massive explosion rocked the Eternal Dominance as a human torpedo struck one of its secondary weapon arrays. Direct hit to Weapons Bank 7, shouted a tactical officer. Shields failing in sections 12 through 18. Zrel's mandibles clicked furiously. Target the largest human vessel. Concentrate all firepower. The Zalaxian command ships turned their massive energy cannons toward the Intrepid. Enough firepower to vaporize a small moon focused on the human vessel. But before they could fire, 20 human ships broke from the battle and formed a precise formation around the Intrepid. Their shields linked, forming a complex, overlapping defense pattern. When the Zalaxians fired, the human shields flared brilliantly, but held. The energy was somehow being channeled between the ships, distributed across the entire formation rather than focused on a single point. Impossible, Zrel shouted. Sir, Vex said urgently, we need to withdraw and reassess. The humans have technology we don't understand. Continuing this battle will only result in more damage to our fleet. For the first time, doubt crept into Zrel's voice. We outnumber them 6-1. How can we be losing? Numbers aren't everything, Commander, Vex replied. Their technology, their coordination. No, Commander, Vex agreed. I believe we've encountered something rare in our Confederation's history. A species that may be our technological equal, perhaps even our superior in some areas. A concerning thought, Zrel said. Vex's mandibles clicked in the Zalaxian equivalent of a smile, or an exciting one. Think of what we might learn from each other. As the damaged Zalaxian fleet regrouped and the human vessels maintained their position, Both sides prepared for the first official diplomatic contact between their species. The Zalaxians had learned a valuable lesson. Never judge a civilization by the size of its ships. Sometimes, the smallest vessels contain the most surprising capabilities, especially when they belong to humans.